Cathy, Ted, and Kasper. Hi, Cathy, welcome. You are such an inspiration, a Latina woman in tech, the godmother of the metaverse. So can you tell us a little bit about it? What is it about? What it is not?
Definitely. I want to start by telling people something really interesting is, I try to go every day to Merriam-Webster's dictionary online and type in the word metaverse. And every time I do this, at least the last time I tried today, it said, this word is not in the dictionary. So I want people to understand that we're trying to define a word that's not in the dictionary, so you should not feel intimidated. There are many different definitions, there are many different opinions on how to define it. The easiest way I am allowing people to understand where we're heading is kind of helping them, bring them through the past to the present. So you had Web 1.0 connected information, and you got the internet. Web 2.0 connected people, and you got social media and the sharing economy and everything that happened there. We're at the end of Web 2.0 going into Web 3.0 that connects people, places, and things, or people, spaces, and assets. And these people, spaces, and assets can be in a fully synthetic virtual environment at times, or it could be in our physical world with some level of augmentation. So as we head into Web 3.0, that's where this idea and this concept of the metaverse, the greater metaverse, kind of is enabled and eventually becomes, potentially a reality that we're building towards. Metaverse is, the successor of today's mobile internet. It is a convergence of physical and digital. It is about shared experiences, persistent content. It's important to kind of try to just wrap your head around it. It's like your physical lifestyle catching up to your physical life. Right? So it's kind of like we've been separate, living separately. Now physical and digital are converging, and it's enabled by a lot of different technologies. It's not just one technology. So people tend to think it's VR, and VR is a part of the metaverse, but it's not the only thing. There's AR and VR as entry points. There's NFTs, blockchain and NFTs, which are a big part. You've got 5G, cloud computing, edge computing, a whole bunch of different technologies that are converging to enable potentially in the future this idea of the metaverse that we're heading into.
Thank you, Cathy. And where are we right now? And why it's so relevant to all of us to get involved in the metaverse? Can we say that the metaverse is like the modern version of like a social media platforms?
It's much greater than that, to be honest. I think that if we only say it's the future of the social media of social media, I think we're limiting its capacity because it will have overarching impacts in how we work and how we play and how we socialize and how we shop. So it's a lot broader, I would say, than just social media. And why are we here right now? So we're at the end of this Web 2.0 world, going into Web 3. Obviously the pandemic accelerated a lot of different things, accelerated us, going into these digital and virtual spaces a lot more. And yeah, we're just kind of going into this new era. It's in some way we're all pioneers, right? This is the wild west in some ways, and we're all building towards that greater metaverse, and we're all kind of doing lots of work right now to create that that future.
Right. Yeah, and that's very true. And what you were saying, and like right now we're here to understand like what's happening inside of all these virtual universes in which, quoting you, Cathy, we are world builders. So I'm jumping to Kasper. You and your team are behind some of the coolest creations for brand in Fortnite, such as the Super Bowl Stadium and the Balenciaga experience. Also, probably you are the youngest speaker at the Converge history. So now we want to ask you, as a player and a creator, how are brands disrupting into these virtual worlds?
Yeah, I believe that we are all we're living in a world where we see a lot of big game titles created by large game studios, and we are transitioning into a phase of user-generated content. This is where, the players become the creators. They become the developers who can develop games and experiences on their terms. So what Cathy is saying with all of us being builders, I believe that is really the future of, gamifying different experiences and creating your own games that you want to play. And this is something that we've seen in other games like Minecraft and Roblox in the past, and most recently Fortnite Creative. And yeah, it's also something that I believe brands start, picking up. So they, can have their presence in a metaverse or inside of a game by, experiences created by us, the people, the builders.
And to continue to wrap this up, Cathy, also you mentioned that probably or maybe the next Coco Chanel could be a 10-year-old girl designing skins for avatars in Roblox. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think that in some of these virtual spaces that we're already inhabiting, there's culture being created, like Kasper knows very well. So there's a lot of things, and when I see my children, like the way they look in game, like their avatar, is very important to them. So it's this transition. It's almost like companies need to start to think about avatars as the next direct to consumer. I talk a lot about, is direct to avatar the next direct to consumer? Because as we head into this Web 3.0 world, it's a lot about digital ownership of digital assets. And those digital assets sometimes will be skins for your avatar or virtual fashion or an NFT, that you're a part of a community. So yeah, it's definitely an evolution. And you're starting to see kind of this convergence of, at least in the fashion world where I do a lot of my work, not only, the people that have been trained in fashion design to manipulate fabric, but a convergence was also with 3D modelers and 3D designers and game developers to kind of come together and take fashion to the next level. So yeah, so I wholeheartedly believe that the world's next Coco Chanel is probably, like I said, a 9-10-year-old girl designing skins in Roblox.
Hello, Ted. We've been working together these past months, so I know you are an innovator at heart. So from your vast experience in the entertainment industry and the way it influences the social fabric, how do you think the experiences of being in a metaverse will reinvent human behaviors and mindsets?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is an interesting conversation. It's hyper timely right now with companies across the entertainment sphere, many of them not what we would consider traditional entertainment companies, but have entertainment arms of their large tech operations now. So they're both collaborators with us and competitors with us, right? Which is an interesting sort of dynamic. But the way that we as Viacom CBS view the opportunities that surround next generation entertainment as it relates to what we often refer to as social fabric are really interesting, and the way people access devices that are largely televisions by their nature, right? So we're all on some sort of television type device that has advanced capabilities. It's a screen, whether it's a laptop, a tablet, a smartphone, or in the more exotic and less mass population use, but growing all the time, VR devices and even more exotic mixed reality devices. These sort of pieces of technology, all screen-based by their nature, are all converging and adding more and more layers of power and more reliability and comfort to the users every day, which is why we've largely moved from the age of traditional telephone voice calls to the mass worldwide adoption of video calls in some fashion by 4 or 5 companies and a couple of new ones like Zoom that have emerged into the sort of stratosphere over the last couple of years, kind of learning from the brethren that started that revolution and finding a few key totems and points of usability that the others didn't quite lock in on and were able to market and bring that into the world so successfully, right? So, like, for example, Cathy and I know each other really well, right? We spend a lot of time talking about this stuff and connected on this stuff. And she brought up the idea of where we're living from Web 2.0, which is a sort of an industry catch term, into Web 3.0, which is another industry catch term. She and I have a slight difference of opinion there because I don't actually believe that Web 2.0 is ending per se. It's just evolving, and the pieces of relevance that were so important to our web experience, customers, consumers, users' web experience 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, are largely sort of moving into the background, right? And then this next evolution of visual tools, largely audio, visual, and then spatial, when it comes to sort of the gaming universe is being adopted by more than just gamers, we start to see this emergence of what we refer to as Web 2.0. But there's not really a hard break from one to the next. It just kind of evolves across the sphere. And what the pandemic has shown us over the last couple of years is when we have a forcing agent, a driving agent outside of technology that forces people to use more technology, those of us that have been in technology day to day find it very natural and logical, but the rest of the people come to it and realize that they have no choice now. So then they start to adopt it, they start to find their interesting sweet spots and loves for certain things, and then we have build up a whole new economy, right? Which is why now we look at these very large technology companies starting to kind of reorganize themselves and promote themselves as metaverse companies. Even though it's really interesting, Cathy, that you mentioned that metaverse is still not in the dictionary, but it comes from literature, right? From science fiction literature of X amount of years ago when the metaverse was defined by an author. So it's kind of fascinating that it hasn't found its way into the online dictionary yet. Probably.
That's so interesting. Thank you, Ted. And now we want to jump to all this boom this year with the NFTs and the cryptocurrencies. So what are your thoughts about them?
I think from my perspective, it's interesting to look at the larger phenomenon of things that we associate value with in the real world or in real life, right? That have now find transference into the digital realm, the digital world, right? So like Cathy was talking about, someone will develop skins and that will become a new fashion icon, right? We're actually already seeing that. That's not science fiction. People are actually doing this now, right? And there's an economy that's being built. But when we can use the blockchain to associate something that has permanence and realism, in the sense of real commerce, real value, that used to only exist with physical objects in the real world, and we can now associate value like that in a virtual world with a virtual object. So, you know, in my sort of generation as sort of the odd elder statesman in this group here, with a lot of much younger people than me, even though I'm sort of the one that always thinks like the one that's the youngest in the room. I'm not technically the youngest in the room. I'm usually now the oldest in the room, oddly enough. Is I've had the understanding of things like, you know, collectible baseball cards and pieces of artwork and record albums that are collectible and things that people would collect because they associated them with value, and that value was real, and we could actually track it, especially if it was autographed by the artist, right, or signed by the artist. And there was actually a term called provenance, which actually connects that, and someone sort of says, yes, that's real, we've actually done some research, and it's documented, it's real, it's not counterfeit, it's not fake. We can now mirror all those sort of connection points in the digital world, in the metaverse per se, as this always-on connected environment that's kind of growing by the second these days, not even by the minute, just expanding and expanding. So the NFT phenomenon is a direct relation of being able to associate digital goods with something that is believed to be real.